I stood frozen, my wide, disbelieving eyes glued to the scene unfolding in Kala's room. There she was, in an unthinkably compromising situation with a strange man. My mind refused to accept what my eyes were witnessing. Without hesitation, I pulled out my phone and recorded a video, the chilling certainty dawning upon me. I knew exactly how I was going to use this footage. Sinister plans began to form in my head, the kind that even Kala couldn't have imagined in her wildest dreams. Night had almost fully draped its shadow over the world as we finished dinner and sat around the TV. I, too, was pretending to be engrossed in the drama playing on the screen when, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something unusual about Kala. Her movements were quicker, more charged with an energy that was far from her usual demeanor. Typically, she would join us in watching TV before heading to the kitchen to clean up, but tonight was different. She was unusually hasty, finishing all the kitchen chores as if she were racing against time. My suspicion grew. This wasn't the first time I had seen her act this way. Unable to hold back, I casually asked, "Ami, isn't Abu home yet?" Ami replied without much thought, "He had some urgent work out of town, so he won't be back tonight." That was the confirmation I needed. Every time Abu was away, Kala's peculiar behavior came to the forefront. She would ensure everyone ate early, wrap up the household tasks quickly, and retreat to her room. Later in the night, when the house was silent, her room's light would flicker on. It was a pattern I had noticed too often to ignore. One evening, while walking past her room, I caught a glimpse of her. She looked unusually delighted, dressed in a new outfit, her makeup meticulously done. It was as though she was preparing for something or someone. The timing was always suspicious, when the rest of us were meant to be in bed. I often wandered the terrace, hoping to catch a hint of who she was meeting in the dead of night. But no one ever appeared. Exhausted and confused, I chalked it up to her odd whims. Yet deep down, I knew there was more to it. And then came the night I heard muffled voices, masculine voices. My heart sank as realization struck me like a thunderbolt. Kala wasn't alone in her room. She had been secretly entertaining strangers. I began to piece it together. Her abrupt changes, her confidence, her disregard for our home sanctity. A wave of anger and betrayal swept over me. How could she? Kala, who had always been the epitome of grace and dignity, had fallen prey to someone's vile influence. My frustration boiled over. How could I let this slide when my own sisters were growing up in the same house? This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the safety and honor of our family. My resolve hardened. Tonight, I would catch her in the act and put an end to it. Feigning normalcy, I kept my eyes on the TV while my mind churned with plans. I waited and waited. Finally, Ami turned off the TV and ushered everyone to their rooms. Without a word, I went to mine. But unlike the others, sleep was the last thing on my mind. I lay in the darkness, my pulse racing, as I waited for the moment when the house would fall silent, and Kala's true intentions would come to light. It was midnight when the strange man entered Kala's room. Quietly, I tiptoed out of my room, knowing full well that he must already be there. As I approached her room, my suspicions were confirmed. The muffled voices of a man and Kala's hushed whispers reached my ears. I had anticipated this and prepared myself beforehand. I knew Kala would have locked her door, so earlier I had discreetly left her window slightly ajar. Instead of trying the door, I headed straight to the window. Scanning the surroundings to ensure no one was watching, I slowly opened it and peered inside. What I saw sent a jolt through my entire being. My breath hitched, my hands trembled, and my body broke into a cold sweat. There, right before my eyes, was my once respected Kala in a shameful state with a strange man. The dim light of a 0-watt bulb barely illuminated the room, casting eerie shadows that made the scene even more surreal. I struggled to make out the man's face. His back was towards me, but Kala's face was clear, her figure unmistakable under the faint glow. Rage surged through me. How could she stoop so low? This was not the Kala I had grown up admiring, but anger quickly gave way to a cold calculation. I steadied my breathing, pulling out my phone. With trembling hands, I began recording. If no one believed me tomorrow, this video would serve as irrefutable proof of her deeds. I captured everything I could before retreating to my room, my head spinning and my heart heavy. Back in the solitude of my room, I played the video to ensure I hadn't missed anything. Kala's face was clearly visible. There was no way she could deny this now. The evidence was damning, and I felt a twisted sense of validation. Yet, sleep eluded me. Every time I closed my eyes, the haunting image of that room played in my mind like a cursed loop. The betrayal, the audacity, the sheer recklessness of her actions. It all gnawed at my soul. I couldn't help but think about my father, who had taken Kala in after Nani's death, offering her shelter and family when she had none. This was how she repaid his kindness, by inviting strangers into his home, desecrating his honor in his absence. My stomach churned with disgust and anger, and I resolved then and there, I would make her pay. The next morning, I feigned a headache to skip college. It wasn't entirely a lie. The sleepless night had left my eyes bloodshot and my head pounding. Even my otherwise strict mother didn't push me to go, seeing my state. Once my sisters left for school and Ami got busy with her chores, I found my chance. I made my way to Kala's room. She was still fast asleep, a habit I now understood all too well. One glance at her face brought back the vivid memories of the previous night. A wave of loathing swept over me, but I quickly gathered myself. There was a plan to execute. I shook her awake, her drowsy eyes fluttered open, and she looked at me with a mix of confusion and suspicion. She couldn't fathom why I was in her room at this hour, especially since in her mind, all the children had already left for school. Little did she know, her carefully constructed facade was about to crumble. Instead of answering her questions, I silently pulled out my phone, opened the video, and played it right in front of her. The moment her eyes fell on the screen, her face turned pale, her half-closed eyes flew open, and she shot up in fear. The terror and shame etched on her face were unmistakable. Kala was visibly shaken, unable to meet my eyes after her secret had been laid bare in front of her nephew. Her crime had been caught, and her dignity shattered. I spoke with venom, my voice dripping with disdain. "I suppose now you understand why I didn't go to college today." My sarcastic tone made her flinch. She looked at me with anguish, but I didn't care. Instead, I threatened her. "I'll show this video to Ami." Initially, she tried to scold me. "Why are you getting involved in such matters?" But I fired back. "And what about you? Do you realize what will happen when everyone finds out? People won't just shame you. They'll humiliate Ami and Abu too, saying their sister is a disgrace." Her already pale face drained of all color. She fell to her knees, begging, "Please don't do that. For God's sake, I'll give you money. Whatever you want." She knew my weakness well, my love for spending money, and she exploited it. Kala was never short of cash. Right there and then, she pulled out 5,000 rupees from her bag and placed it in my hand. The sight of the crisp bill was enough to seal my silence for now. I decided I could milk the situation, taking 5,000 rupees from her every day. And so I kept the video to myself and used it to extort money from her repeatedly. My actions left Kala anxious and miserable, but I didn't care. Her discomfort brought me a twisted satisfaction. However, one day, everything changed. She refused to give me another rupee. "I won't give you anything anymore," she said, her voice trembling but firm. Her words sent my temper spiraling. Furious, I began threatening her again, pushing her to the brink. It was then that she said something that stopped me cold. Her words hit me like a thunderclap, leaving me stunned and speechless. Shame washed over me as her revelations sank in. The ground beneath my feet felt like it would swallow me whole. I never imagined she would say something so shocking. My legs felt heavy as I stumbled back to my room, her words echoing in my mind. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. Regret began to seep into my soul. If only I hadn't seen what I saw. If only I hadn't tormented her. None of this would have happened. Her revelation had crushed me. My head fell into my hands as I sat on the floor, staring at the ground, tears streaming from my eyes. Kala's words haunted me. The man in her room wasn't a stranger at all. I was 17 at the time, a college student, the eldest sibling to my 3 younger sisters, and the only son. When I was 13, my grandmother had passed away, and it was during her funeral that I learned a shocking truth. My mother and Kala were half-siblings to their three brothers. After Nani's death, my uncles had made Kala's life unbearable. They had stripped her of her share of the inheritance and treated her like a servant. Ami had been heartbroken by her sister's plight and wanted to help her, knowing there was no hope from their stepbrothers. My uncles had revealed their true colors shortly after Nana's death, turning their cruelty on both Nani and Kala. This was the reason why Ami never wanted to leave Kala at the mercy of others. At that time, Kala was only 18 years old, too young for marriage. So immediately after Nani's passing, Abu brought Kala to live with us. My uncles were furious with this decision. Their anger turned into bitterness, and they severed all ties with Ami and Kala. But Ami didn't care. She had never relied on their love anyway. Her only concern was for her sister's safety, and Abu's decision had eased her worries. From that moment, Kala began living with us. While the rest of the household adjusted without complaint, Pupo, our paternal aunt, couldn't stand Kala's presence in our home. She would take every opportunity to taunt Ami and Kala, insulting them at every turn. Yet Ami never retaliated. For her, it was enough that her sister was safe and under her watchful eyes. Ami had resolved that once Kala turned 22, she would arrange her marriage. This very resolve became another thorn in Fupo's side. Around this time, a storm hit our family. Fupo's marriage ended in divorce. True to her nature, she blamed Kala for her misfortune, claiming that her husband had left her because of Kala. Of course, this was far from the truth. The reality was that Pupo had brought the situation upon herself. Even after her marriage, she spent most of her time at her brother's house, neglecting her own home and husband. She was more invested in causing trouble for Ami and Kala than maintaining her own marital relationship. Eventually, her husband grew tired of her antics and married another woman, leaving Pupo no choice but to return to our home. Yet she refused to acknowledge her faults, pinning all the blame on Kala and continuing to humiliate her at every opportunity. Pupo was a cunning woman, portraying herself as the epitome of innocence in front of Abu, while tormenting Ami and Kala in his absence. Ami knew better than to complain to Abu. Once when she tried to subtly bring up Pupo's behavior, Abu snapped, "I brought your sister into my house, and this is how you repay me. Ever since my sister got divorced, you've been unable to tolerate her. Let me remind you, this is her brother's house and she has every right to be here." From that day, Ami realized that Abu would never listen to a single word against his sister. She and Kala chose to remain silent, enduring Fupo's venomous taunts as best they could. Ami even advised Kala to stay away from Pupo and avoid confrontation. But Pupo wasn't one to let things go. She would deliberately seek out Kala, stirring up arguments and creating chaos. Time passed, and Kala turned 22. One day, a proposal came for her. The young man was handsome, well-educated, and had recently secured a good job after completing his MBA. He belonged to Nani's family and had known Kala well. As soon as he settled into his career, he proposed to Kala without hesitation. But his arrival sparked another storm. Pupo, with her malicious intent, set her sights on him. She knew Abu's love for her and decided to exploit it to her advantage. In tears, she pleaded with Abu, spinning tales to convince him to let her marry the young man. Surprisingly, Abu, who had already been acting irritable and dismissive about Kala's proposal, immediately agreed to Fupo's demands. He hugged his weeping sister and announced his decision to Ami. "Tell your cousin to marry my sister. I'll arrange a marriage for your sister in a good family," he declared coldly. "After all, it's not like she's running out of time. And if you dare oppose this, remember, I won't just throw your sister out of this house. I'll send you and your daughters packing too. Then let's see who comes to your rescue." Father's ruthlessness had pushed Mother into an impossible corner. She was unwilling to accept this unjust decision, but she had no choice. Trapped in this painful dilemma, it was Kala herself who sacrificed her happiness to save her sister's home. She urged Mother to agree to Fupo's marriage to the man who had come to propose to her. And just like that, the proposal meant for Kala was snatched away, and Fupo became the bride, entering the house that should have been Kala's. At Fupo's departure, Mother made it clear, "If this marriage fails too, don't think about coming back here. Your divorces are a result of your own actions." Mother's heart ached for Kala, and for the first time she shed all restraint and openly confronted Fupo. To everyone's surprise, Father supported her this time. Seeing this unexpected unity, Fupo was left speechless. After her marriage, Fupo chose to focus on her own home, staying out of ours for the most part. It should have been a time of relief for Mother and Kala, but things only grew worse. Kala seemed restless, and Mother too was withdrawn and unusually quiet. Mother had always kept us, her children, away from adult matters, so we had no idea why the atmosphere at home had become so heavy. But over time, Kala's behavior began to raise suspicions, especially for me. When I started keeping a closer eye on her, I discovered the disturbing truth. She had begun associating with strange men. Perhaps she was seeking revenge against Father for taking away her proposal, but in doing so, she was tarnishing her own reputation. This was all I could think about the night I caught her red-handed. I secretly recorded a video of her in a compromising state, planning to use it as leverage. At first, Kala gave me the money I demanded without resistance. But when she finally refused one day, I pushed her harder. It was then that she finally broke down and told me everything. Her revelation shook me to my core. When our mother was on her deathbed, she began, she called a family member and arranged my marriage with him. He was my childhood fiancé, but still a student at the time and couldn't support a wife. So only the nikah was performed with the agreement that I would move to his home once he completed his studies and secured a job. Our mother acted in haste, she continued, desperate to shield me from the schemes of our stepbrothers. She didn't investigate thoroughly, and that was her biggest mistake. Your father has always been a greedy man. After marrying your mother and seizing her inheritance, his ambitions didn't stop there. Both Nani and Mother knew that, like my stepbrothers, your father also had his eyes on my wealth. That's why my nikah was kept a secret. Our mother wanted to ensure my stepbrothers or your father couldn't interfere before my marriage was finalized. After her death, your father brought me into this house, pretending to protect me, but his real motive was to use the income from my properties to build his own assets. When my husband completed his studies and came to take me home, your Fupo showed her true colors. She schemed and manipulated, convincing your father to give her my proposal instead. Your father, of course, agreed. He never intended to let me marry. I was too useful to him as I was. Tears welled up in her eyes as she finished, her voice trembling with pain and anger. If your mother had revealed the truth to him back then, her marriage would have crumbled. If she had fought for me, it would have destroyed her home. She knew the price of challenging your father's greed. Her words struck me like lightning. My legs felt weak as I stumbled back to my room, her confession echoing in my mind. The weight of her sacrifice and suffering pressed down on me like a mountain. Shame engulfed me. I had tormented her without understanding the truth. Tears streamed down my face as I sat, unable to look at myself in the mirror. Here's the continuation of your script, translated into English in a suspenseful and emotional tone. My stepbrothers would destroy your mother and her daughters if they found out the truth. That's why I sacrificed myself, Kala said, her voice trembling with emotion. I gave up my own marriage and had my husband marry your Fupo instead. My husband, your Fupa, wasn't willing to go through with it, but I explained everything to him and he reluctantly agreed. Now he's searching for a job abroad, and as soon as he secures one, he'll take me with him. That's why, when your father isn't home, I call him to come over. I'm not committing a sin. He is my husband. It's my lawful right, a right that your father and Fupo tried to snatch from me. Her words left me rooted to the ground, shame burning through me. I had no idea my father was capable of such deceit. I had always considered him a noble man, someone who had selflessly taken responsibility for Kala. But now I realized he had only kept her around out of greed. As for Fupo, I already knew the depths of her manipulation and cruelty. For days, I couldn't bring myself to face Kala. I had judged her harshly, thinking the worst of her, when in reality, my father, Fupo, and even I had been the real villains. We had caused immeasurable pain to two helpless sisters. But I didn't want to be like my father. I wanted to make things right, for Kala and for myself. I knew my father trusted me blindly. As his only son, he never doubted my intentions. So I devised a plan with my closest friend. A few days later, my friend came to our house with his mother, pretending they were bringing a proposal from his uncle, who was said to live abroad. Before my father could react, I jumped in and said, "I really like my friend's uncle. Please agree to this match and arrange Kala's nikah with him over the phone." My father, eager to maintain his image as the ideal father in my eyes, reluctantly agreed. The nikah was conducted over the phone, though it was just a ruse. Using the pretense of taking Kala to her in-laws, I brought her to Nani's house instead. My father by then had lost interest in Kala entirely. His greed satisfied, he no longer cared about her whereabouts. It wasn't long before Kala's husband secured a job abroad, and she finally left with him. Before their departure, I spoke to Kala's husband and told him, "If you want, you can divorce Fupo. I'll handle everything here." But Kala intervened. She didn't allow the divorce to happen. Kala's actions were deliberate and precise. She had endured years of torment from Fupo, and now she had taken her revenge. By orchestrating the marriage, she had removed Fupo from Mother's life, and now by leaving with her husband, she had secured her own happiness. Her strength and resilience brought a sense of closure, and I silently thanked God for guiding me to help her. I shuddered at the thought of what would have happened had I shown that video to anyone. I would have unknowingly wronged the person who had already suffered so much. It's true what they say. Sometimes, even what you see with your own eyes can be deceptive. What appears to be the truth may just be a clever illusion. In the end, everything worked out. Kala's husband continued to support Fupo financially and stayed in touch with her, sending money and checking in. I was certain it was Kala who insisted he do so, as her heart was filled with kindness and compassion, even for those who had wronged her.